Another little memory I have while I'm sitting here, my grandfather, uh, he worked with the county ASC office. He would go around measure people's land to see if they planted. Everybody had an allotment back then. You had an allotment of cotton and you had an allotment of tobacco. Like we had an acre and 8/10 of an acre of tobacco. I don't remember what the cotton allotment was, but it was something like 4 acres and 3/10 or something like that. Corn allotment. The only thing you didn't have an allotment on was wheat. Everything else had an allotment. Well, he would go around, they would send him around to make sure farmers planted what they were supposed to. And if they didn't plant what they're supposed to, it was his job to go out and catch them, and they'd have to cut it down.
If they grew too much,
if they grew too much.
But then if people weren't growing enough, then they would make the county have to give allotment to somebody else to keep the quotas up.
To keep the quotas up. Well, he worked for that for years, and he got evidently such a good reputation that, in fact, farmers would come to him in the spring of the year and get him to go measure their land. And then a lot of times he would come back and check it for the county, Well, he got so good at it, evidently, that he had a good reputation, and the state made him a state checker. And so they would call him every night. Well, they didn't call him because we didn't have a phone, but when he'd go into the ASC office, they would have certain farms he'd have to go check. If there was confusion between a ASC checker and the person that was growing it, if there was a dispute, they'd send in a state checker. And he was a state checker that would come into that dispute.
And make the final word.
And make the final word and get it settled, whatever that took. Well, one morning, and we was going all over, I would pull the chain, they called it, that they measured.
That's how I measured the land with Grandpa.
And I would pull the stick, what they called, to measure the land. Well, one day we got up, we had a old Nash Rambler. It was a 4-door. The back doors opened wrong. They called them suicide doors. I think they got that name Bonnie and Clyde because they could open that door and shoot somebody that was out the door real easy. But anyhow, we had an old Nash Rambler, and we got in that car one morning, and we left. Well, I was 5 or 6 years old, 6, 7 year old, something like that. And I didn't question where we were going. We just went. And so we rode and rode and rode and rode. Went the back roads all up through Meadow, all up into Johnson County. We pulled up to a store. I didn't know who Percy Flowers was. Didn't have no idea who Percy Flowers was. Didn't matter at that particular time to me. But we pulled up to a store that had Percy Flowers right across the top. We went in, and I can remember it just as good today. We walked into the door, and there was a counter. The man was sitting behind the counter. Well, over to the right, further in the store, there was 4 or 5 men sitting around, and 2 men were playing checkers. And so I followed Papa in, and Papa introduced himself, told him who he was. And Percy said, "I've heard of you." And Granddaddy said, "Well, I've heard of you too." So they discussed what he was there for and everything. He said, "Well, just follow me and I'll take you to the fields that's in question." So he got somebody to look after the counter for him, and here we go. He jumps in a pickup truck down through the fields. We're just flying. And dust is flying everywhere. And we're trying to stay up with him through these fields.
Percy don't want you going slow on his fields.
So we get down to the first field, and me and Papa measured that piece. It was tobacco where it was in question. So we measured that piece of tobacco off, and Papa took a tobacco stick, broke it in half, and he sticks it on one side of the field. And we measured out, he sticks it on the other side of the field, and he tells Mr. Flowers, he said, "Percy, you've got to cut this amount of tobacco down." He said, "I'll take care of it." So we go to the next field. We measured off. He again drives half the sticks down, and he says, you got to cut this amount of tobacco down. So we go to the next field. It's 3 fields in question. And he drives the stock down, and he said, I'll take care of it. So we go back to the store. Well, normally if we go up to a farm and he says, we got to cut this amount of tobacco down, it has to be cut down before he leaves. I know that. I'm just a little boy. But I know that tobacco is supposed to hit the ground. So we get back to the store, and they're talking. And Papa says, now, Mr. Flowers, I need to get this tobacco cut down. He said, I'll have it cut down before dark tonight. And he said, you give me your word that you'll cut it down before dark tonight? He said, I'll give you my word. He said, okay. So we go out and get in the car. Well, I know this is not right. I know this is not right. This is not the way it's supposed to be. I've been with him too many farms. Mm-hmm. So we get in the car and we start coming back through the country, coming home. Well, we hadn't gone far, and I said, Papa. He said, yeah. I said, weren't we supposed to cut that tobacco down by there? Or weren't he supposed to do it before we left? He said, yeah. I said, well, how do you know he's going to cut it down? He said, because he told me, he gave me his word. I said, what makes his word so good above everybody else's? He said, because his word is his bond. If he gives you his word, that's his bond. It's going to happen. If there's any way possible, it's going to happen. So, months later, we were always stopping at stores somewhere during the day, getting Viennese sausage, potted meat, something, piece of cheese, and saltine crackers for lunch. That's basically what we ate at lunch. So months later, I won't say it's too many months, but it's during the tobacco season, we're headed to another farm up on the other side of Percy's. So we get up there to Percy's, and of course it was all back roads back then, no interstates and main highway. And we pull up to Percy's store and we walk in. And when we walk in, Papa says, Percy, he said, Mr. Lambert, he said, did you come back to check on that tobacco? He said, no. He said, we're just going up the road to do another check, and we stopped here to eat lunch. And he said, but you don't want to go see? He said, no. He said, you cut it down, didn't you? He said, yeah. He said, I told you what I'd do, and I did it. He said, well, that's all I need. I don't need nothing else. And so we get back in the car. Of course, I'm a little over inquisitive youngin', you know. And we pull off, and I said, I can't believe you didn't go down there and look at them fields to make sure. He said, I didn't have to, son. He said, you know how I am. If I give a man my handshake and I give him my word, it's going to happen. He said, Percy Flowers has that same reputation. He was a bootlegger. Look, he was one of the few men that had the guts to bake bootlegger liquor and put his private label on it and ship it to New York and sell it.